I threw my son out of his own home and gave away the pet he loved because he dared to choose my ex. My children watched what I did and one by one cut me off completely. Today even my youngest child refuses to cross my doorstep and I am left alone in a house I emptied myself. My youngest daughter Iris sent me a text on Mother's Day. 2 sentences. She said, "I'm not coming. I hope you figure out why." I already know why. I've known for 3 years. I just haven't been able to say it out loud because saying it out loud means admitting that I emptied this house with my own hands. Not movers. Not a fire. Not a landlord. My hands. One child at a time. Until the house was full of furniture and empty of people. And the only sound left is my footsteps on hardwood floors that 4 children used to run across. I am 53 years old. I have 4 children. None of them speak to me. The oldest hasn't called in 3 years. The second hasn't been inside this house in 2 years. The third communicates through a family friend. And the youngest, Iris, 20 years old. The baby. The one I thought would never leave. She sent me 2 sentences on Mother's Day and didn't answer when I called back. My name is Lenore. And this is how I turned a family of 6 into a table set for 1. I divorced my husband Calvin when I was 47. He was 49. 22 years of marriage. The divorce was my decision. Not because he cheated. Not because he hit me. Not because he drank or gambled or did any of the things that make divorces easy to explain. I left because I was unhappy. Because 22 years of the same man in the same house with the same routines had compressed me into a shape I didn't recognize. Because I woke up one morning and realized I'd spent half my life building someone else's version of a family and I wanted to build my own. That's the version I told my friends. The empowerment version. The brave woman reclaiming herself version. The version that gets applause at book clubs and nods at therapy. The real version is simpler. I was bored. And selfish. And I convinced myself that blowing up a stable family was the same as personal growth because personal growth sounds better than I wanted something different, and I didn't care who it hurt. Calvin didn't fight the divorce. He didn't beg. He didn't scream. He sat at the kitchen table when I told him and he said, "If that's what you need, Lenore, I won't stop you." Then he went to the garage and sat in his truck for 45 minutes. The kids were at school. Nobody saw him. But I looked out the window and I could see his silhouette through the windshield. Not moving. Just sitting. That image. His silhouette in the truck. I filed it away like it didn't matter. It matters now. It matters because that was the last time Calvin processed something in my presence. After that he processed everything alone. Quietly. The way he handled everything. Without asking for space. Just taking it. The kids. Our 4 children. Ryland, 26 now. Micah, 24. Sadie, 22. Iris, 20. At the time of the divorce they were 20, 18, 16, and 14. Old enough to understand. Old enough to choose. And that's where I made my first mistake. I expected them to choose me. Not explicitly. Not out loud. But internally I had already decided that the children would align with me because I was their mother. Because mothers are primary. Because I had done the lunches and the laundry and the school pickups and the bedtime routines. Because Calvin worked long hours and I was the one who was there. And being there entitled me to their loyalty. Except Calvin was also there. In the ways I'd stopped noticing. He coached Ryland's baseball team for 6 years. He drove Micah to art school every Saturday morning for 3 years. He built Sadie a reading nook in the corner of her bedroom because she said she wanted a place to disappear. He taught Iris to ride a bike and when she fell and cried he didn't say get up. He said, "Tell me where it hurts." He was there. He was just quiet about it. And I was loud about my contributions and silent about his. And when the divorce happened I expected the scoreboard I've been keeping in my head to matter. It didn't. Because children don't keep score. They keep feelings. And their feelings were with Calvin. Not immediately. Not all at once. It happened in stages. Like a tide going out. Ryland was the first. He was 20 when the divorce finalized. He was the closest to Calvin. Baseball. Truck rides. Weekend projects in the garage. They had a language I was never fluent in. Short sentences. Long silences. The language of men who communicate through proximity instead of words. Ryland told me 6 months after the divorce that he was going to spend Thanksgiving with Calvin. I said, "You're not coming here?" He said, "Dad's alone, Mom. He's in a 2-bedroom apartment. He doesn't have anyone." I said, "He has his choices. He chose to leave." Ryland looked at me. He said, "Mom. You left. You filed. You asked for the divorce. You moved him out. He didn't choose anything. This happened to him. I said, Ryland, I did what was best for me. And I need my family to support that. He said, I do support it. I support your right to leave. But I'm not going to punish Dad for being left. He didn't do anything wrong. And spending Thanksgiving with him isn't choosing sides. It's choosing kindness. I heard the word choosing. And I decided that choosing Calvin for one holiday was choosing against me. Because that's how I processed everything during that period. Binary. You're with me or against me. And anyone who showed my ex-husband compassion was showing me disloyalty. I said, if you go to his apartment for Thanksgiving, you can stay there for Christmas too. Ryland looked at me. For about 3 seconds. Not angry. Sad. The way children look at parents when they realize the parent is smaller than they thought. He said, okay, Mom. He went to Calvin's for Thanksgiving. He didn't come back for Christmas. Not because I told him to stay away. Because I made it clear that coming back required choosing me. And he refused to choose one parent over the other. So by my rules, he chose neither. Which in practice meant he chose Calvin. Because Calvin never asked him to choose. That was the first one. Ryland. Gone. Not dramatically. Just. Gone. The way the tide goes out. You don't hear it leave. You just notice the sand is dry. But it wasn't Ryland that broke everything. It was what I did to him after. What I did to his dog. Buster. A golden retriever. 6 years old. Ryland got Buster as a puppy when he was 14. He raised that dog. He trained him. He walked him before school every morning. He ran with him on weekends. He slept with Buster at the foot of his bed every night for 6 years. When Ryland left for community college, he came home every weekend specifically to see Buster. When the divorce happened and Ryland moved in with Calvin, the one thing he asked was, "Can I take Buster?" I said no. I said Buster was a family dog. I said the dog stays with the house. The house was mine. The dog was mine. My logic. The real reason was leverage. If Buster stayed with me, Ryland would have to visit. He'd have to come to my house. He'd have to walk through my door. And every time he did, I could control the narrative. I could show him the life he was choosing to leave. I could make him feel guilty for being at Calvin's while his dog was at mine. I used a dog as a hostage. I used a living creature my son loved as a tool to force contact. That sentence should be enough. But it gets worse. Ryland visited Buster every week for 3 months. He'd come to the house. He wouldn't come inside. He'd sit on the porch and Buster would come to the door and they'd sit together for an hour. Sometimes 2. He brought treats. He brought the tennis ball Buster liked. He sat on the porch of the house he grew up in like a visitor because his mother had made the inside conditional. I watched from the window. And instead of seeing a son who missed his dog, I saw defiance. I saw a young man who wouldn't come inside. Who wouldn't sit at my table. Who wouldn't give me the acknowledgement I demanded. I saw his porch visits as a protest. Not as love. So I gave Buster away. I waited until Ryland was at work one Tuesday. I loaded Buster into my car. I drove him to a family I'd found through a neighborhood post. A couple with a big yard. 2 kids. I told them the dog needed a new home because of a change in living situation. They took him. They were happy. Buster jumped out of my car and ran toward their kids, and I drove away. I drove away. From my son's dog. The dog he raised from 8 weeks old. The dog that slept at his feet. The dog that was the one piece of his childhood he could still hold. Ryland came that Saturday. He sat on the porch. He called for Buster. Buster didn't come. He knocked on the door. I opened it. He said, "Where's Buster?" I said, "I rehomed him." The silence. Not the angry kind. The empty kind. The kind that doesn't have enough air in it to produce sound. Ryland stood on the porch of his childhood home and his face did something I can't describe with any word other than broke. It broke the way a dam breaks. Not in pieces. All at once. He said, "Where?" I said, "A family with a yard." "He's fine. He's in a better situation." He said, "A better situation than with me." I said, "You weren't here, Ryland. You chose to leave. The dog needed consistent care. I couldn't keep doing it alone." He said, "I came every week. Every single week. I sat on this porch because you wouldn't let me take him. And you gave him away while I was at work. On a Tuesday." I said, "It was the right decision." He said, "For who?" I didn't answer. Because the answer was for me. It was always for me. The divorce was for me. The custody of the dog was for me. The removal of the dog was for me. Every decision I made in the 18 months since the divorce was for me. And the people it affected were just variables in my equation. Ryland left. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't slam anything. He walked to his truck. He sat in it. For about 2 minutes. The same way Calvin sat in his truck the day I told him about the divorce. The same silhouette. The same stillness. Father and son. Processing loss the same way. In a truck. Alone. He drove away. I haven't seen him since. 3 years. I tried to find Buster's new family 2 weeks later. Not to get him back. Because I wanted to tell Ryland where Buster was. A peace offering. But the family had moved. The neighborhood post was deleted. The phone number I had was disconnected. Buster was gone. Into the world. With people I can't find. In a yard I'll never see. I gave away my son's dog and I can't even tell him where the dog is. Micah. The second child. 22 at the time. He's an artist. Quiet like Calvin but expressive in ways Calvin isn't. He paints. Large canvases. Abstract. Things with color and movement that I never understood but always displayed because that's what good mothers do. They display the art. Micah was neutral after the divorce. He didn't choose. He rotated. Thanksgiving with me. Christmas with Calvin. Birthday at a restaurant with both of us separately. He was the diplomat. The one who walked the line. The one I thought would never leave because leaving requires a position and Micah didn't take positions. Until the Buster incident. Micah called me the night he found out. Ryland told him. He said, "Mom, did you give Buster away without telling Ryland?" I said, "Yes. But it was." He said, "Mom, stop. Don't justify it. I need you to hear what I'm saying. You used a dog as leverage to force Ryland to visit. When the leverage stopped working, you removed the dog. Not because it was the right thing. Because you were punishing Ryland for choosing Dad. You punished your own son by taking the one thing he loved that still lived in your house." I said, "Micah, you don't understand the full picture." He said, "I understand the full picture better than you do. Because I'm looking at it from outside. And from outside it looks like a woman who left her husband, demanded her children's loyalty, punished the one who didn't give it, and used an animal as a weapon. That's the full picture, Mom. And it's ugly." I said, "That's not fair." He said, "Buster sleeping on the floor of a stranger's house instead of at the foot of Ryland's bed. That's not fair." Micah didn't cut me off immediately. He faded. Slowly. The visits got shorter. The calls got less frequent. The texts went from paragraphs to sentences to single words. Fine. Okay. Busy. The vocabulary of a child who is withdrawing but doesn't want to slam the door because slamming isn't in his nature. He just dimmed. Like a light on a slow switch. He stopped coming to the house 18 months ago. He didn't announce it. He just stopped. One Saturday I realized I hadn't seen him in 6 weeks. Then 8. Then 12. I called. He said, "I'm good, Mom. Just busy." I said, "Can I see you?" He said, "Maybe next month." Next month didn't come. The month after that didn't either. Micah is still in the city. He has a studio. He paints. He sees Calvin regularly. He sees Ryland. He exists 20 minutes from my house and he might as well be on another planet. Sadie. The third child. 20 at the time of the Buster incident. She's the direct one. The one who says things nobody else will say. The one who looks you in the eye and delivers truth without padding because she believes padding is dishonesty in a softer font. Sadie didn't fade. Sadie confronted. She came to the house 2 weeks after Micah's phone call. She sat at the kitchen table. She said, "Mom, I need to say things and I need you to not interrupt." I said, "Okay." She said, "You divorced Dad because you were unhappy." Fine. That's your right. But everything after the divorce has been a punishment campaign. You punished Dad by taking the house. You punished Ryland by weaponizing his dog. You punished Micah by making every visit feel like a loyalty test. And you're punishing Iris by putting her in the middle and making her feel guilty for loving her father. I said, "I have never put Iris in the middle." She said, "You call her every time she visits Dad and ask how it went. You ask what they talked about. You ask if he's seeing anyone. You use a 14-year-old as an intelligence source on your ex-husband's life. That's not mothering. That's surveillance. And she feels it." She told me. She said she feels like a spy. Not a daughter. I said, "I'm just interested in her life." She said, "You're interested in Dad's life through her. And she's tired of being the window you look through because you closed every door. Sadie stood up. She said, I'm going to say one more thing. Buster. Ryland loved that dog more than anything in this house, including you. And you gave Buster away to punish him? Not to rehome the dog. To punish your son. For loving his father. That is the cruelest thing I've ever seen a parent do. And I've seen a lot. Because I watched you do it, and I watched Ryland's face when he found out, and I will never unsee it. She said, I'm not cutting you off. But I'm not coming to this house anymore. Because this house used to have a dog and 4 children and a husband, and laughter and noise, and all of it is gone now. And the only person left in it is the person who made everyone leave. She walked out. Clean. Direct. No tears. No drama. Just truth in a softer font that she decided wasn't soft enough. Sadie communicates through a family friend now. Helena. She sends updates through Helena. Sadie is fine. Sadie is working. Sadie says happy birthday. Third-party messages from a daughter who lives 30 minutes away. Iris. The youngest. 14 during the divorce. 17 during the Buster incident. 20 now. The baby of the family. The one I was sure would stay because babies stay. Because youngest children are loyal. Because Iris and I had something the others didn't. A closeness. A bond. She was my child. The one who crawled into my bed during thunderstorms. The one who made me cards on Mother's Day with glitter glue and crooked letters. The one who said, I love you, Mommy, until she was 12 and then shortened it to, love you, Mom, and I thought that shortening was the worst loss I'd ever experience. It wasn't. The worst loss was 2 sentences on Mother's Day from a phone screen. Iris held on the longest. Through the divorce. Through Ryland's departure. Through the Buster incident. Through Micah's fading. Through Sadie's confrontation. She held on because she was young enough to hope and old enough to see in the space between those two things is where the most painful kind of love lives. She visited me every week until she was 18. She sat at the kitchen table. She ate whatever I cooked. She told me about school. About friends. About a boy she liked who played bass in a band. She gave me the one thing I should have been giving her. Presents. She showed up for me while I was making it impossible for everyone else to show up. But the visits changed. Slowly. She started looking at the empty spaces. Ryland's room. Door closed. Untouched. Micah's art on the walls. Same pieces. No new ones. Sadie's reading nook. Empty. Buster's bed by the kitchen door. Still there. I never moved it. Because moving it meant admitting what I'd done. So the dog bed sat there. Flat. Empty. A monument to a decision I made on a Tuesday while my son was at work. Iris asked me once. She was 18. She said, Mom, why is Buster's bed still here? I said, I just haven't moved it. She said, it's been 2 years. I said, I know. She looked at the bed. She said, you know Ryland still looks for him. Online. Shelters. Lost dog groups. He's been looking for 2 years. He posts Buster's photo every few months. Have you seen Golden Retriever, 6 years old, answers to Buster. He still thinks he can find him. I didn't know that. My son had been searching for his dog for 2 years. Posting. Looking. Hoping. For a dog I gave away without telling him. A dog I can't even help him find because the family moved and the number is disconnected. Iris said, Mom. Do you feel bad about it? I said, I did what I thought was right at the time. She said, that's not what I asked. I asked if you feel bad. I said, I think about it. She said, thinking about it and feeling bad are different things. Dad feels bad. About the divorce. About not being here. About missing stuff. He feels it. In his body. I can see it on him. When I ask if he's okay, he says, I miss you guys. And I believe him. When I ask if you're okay, you say, I'm fine. And I believe that too. But fine isn't the same as feeling. And I need a mom who feels things. Not a mom who's fine. That was the closest Iris ever came to leaving while standing in the room. She didn't cut me off that day. She cut me off 6 months later. Quietly. The way all my children leave. Without a scene. Without a confrontation. The visits went from weekly to bi-weekly to monthly to texts only. And then Mother's Day. 2 sentences. I'm not coming. I hope you figure out why. I figured out why 3 years ago. When I loaded Buster into my car. When I drove to a stranger's yard. When I came home and removed the one living thing that was keeping my son attached to this house. I figured out why when I told Ryland he could stay at Calvin's for Christmas too. When I asked Iris what Calvin was doing instead of asking what Iris was doing. When I made every holiday a test and every phone call an interrogation and every visit a performance review. I figured out why. I've known the whole time. I just couldn't say it because saying it meant the empowerment narrative was a lie. The brave woman reclaiming herself was a lie. The mother who did what was best for her was a lie. The truth is I was selfish. The divorce was selfish. The dog was selfish. The loyalty demands were selfish. Every decision I made in the last 6 years was about me. My comfort. My ego. My need to be chosen. My inability to accept that my children could love their father without loving me less. Calvin never asked them to choose. Not once. He never said a bad word about me. He never weaponized information. He never used holidays as tests. He sat in his 2-bedroom apartment, and he left the door open and he let them come when they wanted, and he never once made them feel like loving me was a betrayal of him. I did the opposite. I made loving him a betrayal of me. I punished it. With dog removals. With ultimatums. With guilt. With 2 decades of mothering used as currency to buy allegiance I hadn't earned through the divorce. Calvin has all 4 of them. Not because he fought for them. Because he didn't. He just existed. Openly. Honestly. Without conditions. And one by one they walked toward the open door and away from the closed one. I'm the closed door. I've been the closed door for 6 years. And the sign on it says, "Enter only if you choose me." And my children read the sign. And they chose the door without one. My sister called me last week. She said, "Lenore, what are you doing for the holiday?" I said, "Nothing." She said, "Come to my house." I said, "Will the kids be there?" She said, "Ryland and Micah are going to Calvin's. Sadie has plans with friends." Iris didn't say. Everyone accounted for. Everyone with somewhere to go. Everyone with a door that opens for them. My sister said, "Lenore, I love you. But I need to say something." She said, "You emptied that house yourself. Not Calvin. Not the kids. You. With every ultimatum. Every guilt trip. Every holiday you turned into a loyalty test. You squeezed and squeezed and squeezed until there was nothing left to hold. And now you're sitting in a 5-bedroom house with no one in it wondering where everyone went." She said, "They didn't go anywhere. They were pushed out. By the woman who was supposed to hold them closest." I said, "I know." She said, "Do you? Because knowing and changing are different things. You've known for 3 years. What have you changed?" I didn't have an answer. Because I haven't changed anything. The dog bed is still by the kitchen door. Ryland's room is still closed. The table is still set for one because setting it for more would mean admitting there used to be more and there isn't any more, and the isn't is my fault. Buster. I think about him more than I think about anything else. Not the children. The dog. Because the children are alive and I know where they are and I know they're okay. Buster I don't know about. He could be in a yard somewhere. Happy. Chasing a ball. Sleeping at the foot of a bed that isn't Ryland's. Or he could be gone. 6 years old when I gave him away. He'd be 9 now. Golden's lived to 12. Maybe 13. He has years left. Somewhere. Ryland is still looking. My sister told me. He still posts. Once a month. The same photo. Buster at 2 years old. Tennis ball in his mouth. Caption says, "Still looking. If you see him please contact me." Still looking. My son has been looking for his dog for 3 years. And I can't help him find it because I gave the dog away in anger and didn't keep the records because keeping the records would have meant admitting the act was significant enough to document. I sit in this house. 5 bedrooms. 1 occupied. A kitchen table that seats 6. A dog bed by the door. A son's room with the door closed. Art on the walls that hasn't changed. A reading nook with no reader. A garage where Calvin used to sit in his truck processing things I should have helped him process. I emptied this house. Child by child. Decision by decision. Buster by Buster. My youngest sent me 2 sentences on Mother's Day. "I'm not coming. I hope you figure out why." I figured it out, Iris. I figured it out the day I loaded a golden retriever into my car and drove to a stranger's yard while your brother was at work. I figured it out when I told Ryland he could stay at your father's for Christmas. I figured it out when Sadie said this house used to have laughter and noise and all of it is gone. I figured it out. I just didn't stop. And now the house is exactly what I made it. Mine. Completely. Exclusively. Permanently mine. 5 bedrooms. A kitchen table. A dog bed. And nobody left to sit in any of them.